Today, we're going to be presenting two solutions with two of our partners, Mekorma and Continia. And Mekorma will be presenting first with Joy, and then that will be followed up with Patrick from Continia. And if you have any questions throughout the demo, please feel free to ask him, at any time. We'll unmute the mics, and at the end of the presentation, if you have further questions, please let us know. So what we'll do now is I'm going to turn this over to Joy with Mekorma. She will go through her solution, and then we'll follow up with Patrick. Joy?
Okay, so I think I'm actually going to just talk about our solution real quick and then hand it back to Patrick and let him start, because
Sure.
I think it'll make more sense if we do it that
Absolutely.
way. I apologize if I was confusing on that. But good chances are that if you're on this call, you guys have struggled with some manual payment processes. You're either chasing down approvals, right, paper checks. And so Mekorma has been around for 30 years. We have a lot of expertise in that AP process and the payment side of it. And we are automating that for our clients now, and helping them create that seamless end-to-end AP workflow. So I just want to share with you that we are excited to be here today. But we'll start with Patrick. I'll let Patrick jump in and talk about from the beginning, where he gets the invoices in, and then we'll take over where the invoices are posted, and then payments time. Patrick, your turn.
All right. Well, like Joy said, appreciate you all joining us today. My name is Patrick Johnson, Partner Account Manager here at Continia Software. A little bit about what we're going to show today. So we're going to focus on document capture, which is our flagship product. It's cloud-based OCR. We have the ability to capture almost any kind of document type, translate that information to the related fields inside of Business Central, all leveraging Microsoft's best-in-class Copilot AI, as well as our own proprietary machine learning model. Much like Mekorma, we have been in the ISV space for over 3 decades. We've always focused on BC and NAV. So all of our solutions are actually built into the ERP rather than being an add-on or requiring any kind of third-party services, web services, APIs, or additional connection points. We live directly inside of the ERP. We're giving you the ability to process all of these documents generally at about 81 cents per document. So the transactional cost is minimal. We usually see more than a 30% cost savings within the first week, and that actually progresses to saving people usually about 80% of their AP cost through the processing of these documents, as well as a multitude of other document types. I'm going to show you primarily AP invoices. However, I always like to call out that we can do so much more. You can use this to onboard customers, vendors. It's going to be a great use case for today's purposes, particularly with the use of the two products. But also, you can use this for a commercial model. You can use it for warehousing if you want to integrate the warehousing subledger through the ERP and do integrated 2- and 3-way matching, all directly through the ERP. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we will talk a little bit about how this works. So inside of Business Central, that's a key factor to today's conversation, built-in BC. If you see us at conferences or out in the public, you will see that logo embroidered across our shirts, and it's because we really do embody it. All of our solutions are built directly inside of the ERP itself. You'll notice I am inside of a native Business Central environment. But I've added expense management, document capture, and some of our other solutions to this environment. And you'll notice we utilize Business Central's native tiles, actions, and queues. But we're just adding functionality on top of what Business Central already does today. Now, in addition to working inside of Business Central, we also build our own role centers. You can modify these. Of course, they can be utilized throughout the use of customization, personalization, or design mode inside of BC. This essentially consolidates your view down to a very specific job function. I'm going to jump into our document capture role, and this is important because this consolidates my view down, particularly for some AP automation. This gives me the ability to see all of the documents being ready to be processed. You can see we've got our own tiles and actions down here, but also this little insights panel is really important. And what this is it's a view of Azure. So it's giving you the ability to see those things being processed inside of the OCR directly inside of Business Central before they ever hit the ERP. Now that's important because we actually segregate out by queues. The way that we do that is subscribing to email addresses. You can have consolidated email addresses if you have a multi-entity environment. You can have a MEM environment. So if you're using like binary streams, multi-entity management inside of the environment, or if you're just running multi-company single environment. Of course, all of these can be utilized through your own Active Directory. You can dictate the email addresses. It's not constrained by Continia. And all we're going to do is send some emails with attachments to invoices right? And so I've already done that this morning. We process at about 1 page per second. You'll also notice that we have the ability to quarantine away bad actors, marketing emails, or spam so that you don't have to back out entries, deal with bad data trying to hit your system, or have to deal with what I'll call, errant entries inside of the ERP. Our goal is more about validation than it is about reading everything by rote. So I've got quite a few examples loaded here. We'll start in what's called the document journal. This is your view of what the OCR is actually doing in the cloud. Now, I didn't build any of these templates. Our AI model ran from the second that it started processing. And you'll also notice that I have the ability to actually preview what the OCR is doing inside of my Business Central environment. Now, it's also important to note that this preview follows the transaction through its life cycle inside of the ERP. So as I review this from the OCR perspective, that's fine, and I can see everything. And actually see this preview inside of their native BC environment because we believe in a single screen, single interface, single use. This removes your need to use multiple monitors, navigate away from the transaction that you're looking at, or even use a third-party tool like Adobe Acrobat to be able to preview these. You can see them in line with the transaction that's being created. So what is this doing? First and foremost, it's looking to make sure that we're grabbing the correct kind of transaction so it knows that this is an invoice, because we can process, again, more than just invoices. We could do prepayments, credit memos, ASNs or advanced shipping notice, BOL or bills of lading. You can onboard customers, you can onboard vendors, a lot of documents. So please don't think of this just as an AP automation tool. This is a document processing and a process automation tool. So once we've received it, recognize that it's an invoice. We also have to match this up to the correct master record and send to our vendors. So first and foremost, it is looking at the vendor name. However, you can have an instance where maybe a vendor has identical names but multiple accounts. Usually this happens like with a parent subsidiary environment, or maybe they have multiple locations and you have to segregate those by different accounts inside of your environment. So I'm not just looking at the name. In this case, I'm also looking at address line 1 and the postal code and making sure that I'm matching this to the correct vendor record inside of my ERP. Once we recognize and have validated the correct vendor has been located, we're then starting the process of importing information into the header of the invoice. So Continia does not use XY mapping, right? We're not looking at regions, we're looking at context. So the idea is that we're looking for the invoice number. It's a required field inside of BC. So we found it. Invoice number is a 1-to-1, and that's easy enough. We saw the text, we're grabbing it and mapping that related entry to the related field inside of Business Central. But then we're also using context, because again, we're not just reading by rote, we're using contextual information in our own machine learning model to find information for you without your human input or intervention. Now, of course, I'm talking a lot about automation and removing human input. However, we're giving you full control of the solution. You're not going to let automation get away from you, but automate where it makes sense. So in this case, we saw doc date, and our machine learning model has learned through the process of processing hundreds of thousands of documents per month for more than 30 years. Doc date in the context of an invoice generally means the invoice date. You'll also recognize it is automatically converting date formats to match our required format from Business Central. So it's taking this vendor's date format and automatically converting it to the field requirement that we have inside of Business Central. And again, I'm going to keep saying this because it's important. We're not just reading everything by rote. We're also validating information. So due date is a wonderful example of this. In this instance, you can see that due date is registered as 2/28/25. However, the OCR model is also looking at the vendor master inside of the ERP and referencing payment terms. It recognized a variance, right? It saw that current payment terms associated with this vendor is current month. If that were to be true against this document, this would have really been due on January 31st. Now, this instance is actually a benefit to me from a cash flow perspective. So we're going to go ahead and let it process. But we're also adding more than 50 business rules to your environment on day one. So this gives you the ability to find, validate, and automate a lot of this process all within the OCR, right? So what are these doing? So we're using 3 different escalation points to leverage these business rules. Information is exactly what it sounds like. We're literally adding a comment to the audit trail inside of the ERP. Essentially, the OCR service has recognized, or an individual has manually processed something inside of this document. We also have a warning, which is an example of what we just saw, right? And now a warning is not necessarily a call to action, it's a call to attention. It's giving you a reference that the OCR service has seen something inside of your environment that's a little bit different in this document. Now, again, it's not telling the OCR service to stop, but it is making a comment inside of the audit trail of the ERP, because it's important to have that to show the OCR service doing something or an individual input on a change or a modification, because we want to create a single source of truth should you find yourself in an audit situation or just going through monthly reconciliation. And then lastly, you'll see that we have errors. Now, an error is a true hard stop. It tells the OCR service not to process this document until this is resolved. But we also recognize that errors are not always resolved by the same individual within your organizations. Something administrative might need to go to IT, something financial in nature might need to be escalated to a controller or a CFO, or maybe you just need to return correspondence to a vendor either on validation or a revision to a document. That can be routed to an AP team, because these do not have to be a one-to-one relationship. You can, of course, assign them to an individual, but you can also assign them to work groups. And the idea is that as you assign these errors to individuals or work groups within your organization, they're assigned to that group or individual that can resolve it as quickly as possible, or within your segregated duties, those people who are responsible for doing so. Now, once you resolve an error, you're essentially training the OCR service or Business Central to resolve that error in an ongoing state. So essentially, you're creating a business rule inside of the ERP or inside of the OCR service to resolve future errors. So if you resolve an error on one time, you should never see it again in perpetuity. So as you create rules and resolve these errors, you should no longer see them throughout the course of use. You'll find that our OCR service has more than a 94% accuracy rate on first read. Now, that does not necessarily mean that we only read 94% of the information. That means that we have a 100% read rate on 94% of our documents. So on the first time that you register a document, 94% of the time it gets 100% of the information accurate. Okay. In addition to that, we're also validating math, because vendors are people too. We had several instances in the last couple of months where a vendor actually changed their invoice layout and didn't calculate quantity times unit cost correctly. Again, and I'm going to keep saying this, we're more than an OCR. We're not just reading context, we're validating information. So we're validating the subtotal entry is accurate. You can also notice that we can route things like taxable entries to a separate GL account. And then we're validating the gross total. We're making sure that this math is accurate and that your vendors have submitted accurate information on their documentation, so we're not ingesting bad data. We're also pulling in contextual information from the invoices. So if you're writing a GL entry, maybe you're just recognizing an expense. Anytime that you enter a GL account into a journal or into a line level on a purchase invoice, the first thing that gets returned in Business Central is the GL account name. If you have 900 entries in a year that all say miscellaneous external office expense, that becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to reconcile or audit. By capturing this information and translating it to the line posting description inside of Business Central, you can now use searching functions, filters, and reports to find the very specific transactions you might be looking for, again, either through an audit or a reconciliation process. Doing that natively and automatically directly on first read. Now, one of the things that Joy is going to show you is vendor validation. So maybe your first instance is a invoice with a vendor, right? So the first time communication with a vendor is their first invoice. It's non-traditional, and ideally you're going to go through a formalized vendor onboarding process, but we recognize that's not always the case. You can actually use the OCR service to create a vendor account. You can see that the OCR service has read the context from the header inside of this document, and it's going to go ahead and automatically create a vendor account inside of Business Central. You can also see that it's automatically started to read documentation from the invoice itself. I can even tell it, I want you to capture line level information. Right here, all I have to do is tell it to recognize lines. I have the ability to do it manually, but we're in the age of AI, so why not we leverage our AI model? All I have to do is tell it to do that, recognize the fields, and you'll see that it's automatically mapping around context. So it's pulling all of that information directly into the ERP, mapping it to the related fields inside of it, and then validating the information around the line totals and then the gross total. Okay, I'm going to go back to this other document. I'm going to go ahead and register it. What this is doing is also doing all of those validations over again because we're in a live environment. People are creating invoices, people are creating transactions behind the scenes, people are modifying records. We want to run those business rules again. And we've seen an approval request has been sent. This dialogue is a great milestone in the conversation because it gives me the opportunity to tell you that everything up until this point, because we didn't trigger any errors, there were no math validation issues, and everything matched a one-to-one, it can be 100% zero human touch. So you can go all the way from receipt of the email from your vendors, processing inside of the OCR, mapping to the correct fields inside of Business Central, validation against all of the math and context around configuration inside of the ERP, as well as the validation of more than 50 business rules and the lookups associated with approvals without having any human interaction. Now, of course, again, you can create any kind of interrupts. You have full control of the service, but this is a good example of what a future state might look like in a full automation process. Now, I have a business rule that says that anything hitting the 60,000 range of my chart of accounts requires the approval of the controller and the CFO. So you can see, again, we're just creating a native purchase invoice inside of Business Central, but we're adding the additional functionality of that preview directly to the ERP. Now I'm logged in as Esther. Esther is essentially the controller in this organization. And Esther has the ability now to not necessarily become a highly paid data entry specialist. Esther is a true approver, and she gets to take that time that she would have taken to enter invoices, validate the information, and then make modifications to it, and apply that time to other value add statements within the organization. So again, I'm not going to go through and validate all this information. We did that through the review of the OCR process, but essentially Esther only has to come in here and make sure this is the correct vendor. The information looks accurate to them. Of course, you still have full edit capabilities. You can modify anything inside of the lines or header in this, right? Maybe if I want to say like organizational, I can also modify things like dimensions, right? So you still have full control over the entry of this information. We're just helping you with the ingesting, validation, and automation of the creation of this document. Now, we know that this is accurate, so all I have to do is click approve. You can see it's automatically escalated to Robin, who's the CFO of this organization. Interestingly, because we're creating an audit trail and we're tracking the approval flows, Robin can even see those approvals that are going to come to them in a future state. So Esther might be bogged down at month end. Robin can jump in there and actually pull transactions to themselves. Now, of course, that is going to log to the audit trail that Esther was skipped in the approval flow, but Robin can help Esther out and pull those things that are going to come to them anyway and approve them in advance. In addition to that, we're also adding other features to the ERP. So of course, you want to notify all of these people that they have approvals. So not only are they getting in-app notifications inside of Business Central, but you can also send automated emails. These emails can be triggered by job queues, which are essentially server-side tasks, and you can email everybody within the organization with open approvals. You can even set up really unique rules. My great use case is that I used to be a cost accountant, and we had a business rule within the firm that said that I couldn't leave the building until I had closed the period. Monday through Friday, the first 3 weeks of the period, I would email everybody at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. But starting the last week of the period, I started at midnight and I emailed them every 30 minutes, all generated from the ERP. Now, if you complete your approvals, you no longer receive the notifications. But if you have those open approvals, you can use the system to enforce your own business rules, and you can create some accountability within the organization by leveraging tools inside of the ERP. You can also use other functions like document search, which gives you the ability to find documents processed inside of the OCR. This is really great if you find yourself in an audit situation and need to find documents quickly. So essentially, if an auditor is sitting in front of you and says, I need to see all of the invoices for mouse pads, great, I can use keyword searching and find the word mouse. That's going to look inside of the OCR and find all documents with that keyword inside of it. You can also use it to find things like numerical values. $900, there it is right there. Not only can you find it, but you can navigate directly to the transaction all within 3 button clicks. So you can also show the incoming email. So if you're in an audit situation and you need to reconcile receipt all the way out through payment, you can do that from a singular screen with 3 button clicks. All right. Well, Joy, I think I've taken a significant amount of time. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and we'll talk a little bit about vendor validation as well as payment processing inside of Business Central.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Okay, so let me share my screen. Oops. Give me just a second. All right, so let's start with payment automation inside Business Central. So using our Mekorma tools. Since we are fully embedded, you truly never leave your ERP system, right, to process your AP. So that's kind of where our Mekorma tools really hit home. So I'm going to start with our action board. And what our action board is, and I'm pull it up. It is basically the central hub where you can start making your payments. So you can build your payment batches, you can submit them for approval here, process those payments, and post those batches. And how this is run by your build IDs and process templates. And by that, I mean a build ID is going to, let me just show it to you real quick. And this is just a setup feature that you would set up one time and then you're done. You just figure out what your criteria is. This is my weekly build ID. And that is telling it like what I want it to pull, right? So I want it to pull anything that's current date plus 45. And then my process template inside here, again, this is a setup feature. And so once it's set up, you kind of set up and forget it, right? But that process template is going to tell it which companies and how to pay them, right? So is it going to pay them by which bank account, if you have multiple, and if you have multiple companies, or if you're going to use the remote payment service. So let's just kind of go through the full payment cycle here at our action board. So the action board hopefully eliminates some of those mistakes that happen. We're going to go ahead and build a payment batch using this process template that we have created. And I will just mark all, and I'm going to hit process here. And basically, it is going to build that batch. I'm going to hit refresh so that our report's ready. And these are still editable batches, right? They're not done and set in stone by any means. And if you have approvals turned on, you will go to the next step of approval. So I've created those batch, and I do have approvals turned on for Kronos company, so I can show that to you. It is basically saying, hey, I want to send these off for approval. So we're going to go ahead and hit that button. And let's go over to my approver, Debbie. And Debbie will have her request to approve. And here's her payment journals that she needs to approve. This is a BC function that you can turn on, but we're just bringing it to light at our action board and allowing you to use that. So this, we can open the record. You can see the payments that were brought for review. And you can even go in, if you're using Continia, you would be able to drill back in and see each individual document that's tied to that. So every invoice. So I'm going to go ahead and approve that payment batch from Debbie and go back in, and let's go back to my action board so you can see the beauty of where we're at. So now I'm going to process payments, and I should have that other batch from Balance Business in here as well, because I didn't have approvals turned on. It would just go to the next step. So 102 right here, Balance Business, and 102 Kronos are the two that we have been working with. So we're going to go ahead and process those. And if they are checks, that would send it to your printer, right? Because I'm going to print those checks. If it's an ACH, it's going to build that ACH file for you. If it's remote payment service, let's go over here and talk about remote payment service. If it's a remote payment service one, it is going to send it off. And I'm going to show you how to manually send that off. It would have sent this off automatically, but to show you what that means, I wanted to prepare one here for you so you could see it. And we're going to go to our actions. And what I mean by sending it off for the remote payment service to handle is I literally am not downloading or importing or uploading any kind of files to a service. It is actually connecting with the service, and it's going to send it automatically. As soon as it sends, the remote payment service will get that file, and then they will approve it, and they will process those checks, those ACH files if you want that outsourced, or pay by a virtual card. And there's a lot to that we can talk about if interested. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh for this demo. It would normally just refresh itself, right? But to show you what happens next, so if I'm done as the AP person, I no longer am stuffing those checks, I'm going to go ahead and post them. And so once I post it, it will now be available for my bank reconciliation over here and in my checkbook. And you're going to see those three right here. They were called RPS 05, 05, 06, and 07. There's my three payments. You can see how they list in that bank rec so that it's easy to reconcile at the end of the month, or however, if you maybe reconcile weekly. So that's if you did remote payment service. Let's go back to that action board, and we processed those payments. Let's post those batches. Right. We're going to post these, and once those are posted, it is automatically saved in your payments per vendor, a copy of that check and any supporting attachments. So notice here, my copy of the check is right here. We also have developed our enhanced check printing. So if you are doing in-house check printing, there is a way to use our super check that allows you to have more than 10 invoices listed on the check stub. And then you've got your supporting documents here, which allow you to not take up that next check. So like in Business Central, if you use the BC check printing, the extras print on the next check, and then you are wasting check numbers and check stock. So that is saving that automatically. I did nothing to do that, right? It's going to be there for you and be available. And then let's go back to that enhanced check printing and talk about that. If you are doing enhanced check printing, you may have some signatures. You want to have electronic signatures printed on those checks. So we can store those signatures securely here and then tie them to a threshold So if I open up the threshold of 2 signatures, you can see that the signature is, I'm going to print on here anything up to 1,000, and then anything over $1,001 to here, it's going to print 2 signatures. You can develop your criteria how you need it to develop. As far as if you're going to continue to use check printing inside of BC, and to be honest, everybody ends up having to write a check every now and then if you're located in the States. So between bank reconciliation with our product, because it's fully embedded, it makes it super simple. We've also got that, all-in-one action board.
Just finished. I'm working on it. So,
Oh, do we have a question?
You think I can get it?
give me 3 hours.
End of day?
Yes. Good.
Yeah, Joy, I think he had his mic on.
Oh, okay. I was like, I thought maybe I just missed something. I'm sorry. Okay, so the Mekorma features basically help you spend less time managing your AP and juggling all those payment methods, and allow you to automate that and simplify that. And again, we've just been around for a long time in this space, and so we are just excited to show this to you. And if you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer those. I think I need to pass it back to, I'm not sure who's going to go next after that.
Yeah, Joy, this is Dominic. So as far as the payment processing, now that can be outsourced as well, right? You have that capability if the client wants to put the onus of the actual payments on another provider. You have that ability to do that.
Yep, that's what this was. So
sorry. Okay.
So that payment, I submitted over to Mekorma, submitted that file over, and then it shows up in your bank rec, just like it would if you would have written that check yourself, but you had sent it off.
Okay. Any questions from anyone regarding what was presented today? No? Okay. Did you have anything, Patrick, you wanted to share, or Joy, anything else you wanted to share?
I did forget to show them vendor validation.
Oh,
vendor
okay.
validation is kind of the start of your process, right? Because you got to get your vendor in. I apologize. So vendor validation goes out to the irs.gov website and checks the tax ID number and verifies it. It goes out to the Google USPS website and confirms the address is correct. And it also will go out to the OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control, and will make sure that they are not on that list. And as an example of that, let me show that to you. So here is my vendor, One Act a Day. It's got a tax ID number, and I'm going to validate this one vendor for this example. And once it's validated, it comes back with the information. It literally went out to the website, and it brought back our information that my IRS records are correct. There was no match at OFAC, and my address has been validated. As you can see, I did have an issue here, and that was just due to the timing of when I sent that. And my internet went out right then, just so you know. And so it did that, but it will validate one at a time. It will also validate in bulk. So if you were to get started, right, and you wanted to use the vendors that you have currently, and you want to go ahead and get those all validated at once, I could go ahead and hit validate, and it will bring back all of my information down here. And then I can go through that information and reconcile, fix anything that it's telling me to, and make sure that everything is correct in my vendor files. So in that state of it, let me get to the setup so you can see. You can also block your payments. And we have it as never right now. But I can also say, upon warning or upon error, I can block the payments. I can also do it at the pay run. So at my pay run validation would be if let's just say I want to keep it super clean, every 90 days, I want to make sure my vendors are validated. It will allow you to put your payment batch in, and it will validate those vendors at that time. And if anything comes back wonky, you can correct it and revalidate so that it corrects itself.
Very good. Thanks, Joy.
Dominic, can you hear me?
Any questions on the vendor?
Dominic, can you hear me? This is Brian.
Oh, Brian, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Hey, sorry about thinking about that. So on the vendor, is this interactive? Meaning, if the vendor didn't turn in their 1099, or if I need insurance information from the vendor, is that more of a workflow that I would set up in BC, or is that something that the vendor, obviously they could send it in, maybe in the OCR component of the document would recognize it. Curious, how does that vendor portal work, or does it work outwardly?
Sure. On our end, from Mekorma's end, we're just validating the vendor once it's in. So we're not checking to see if it has all the proper information. But it is making sure and confirming that the address, the tax ID, and it's not listed on that OFAC website.
You're just focused on the statutory requirements right there, right, of a valid vendor. But if we had other business rules to onboard a new vendor, there would just be some other process around that.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. We didn't talk about purchase orders or anything from that perspective. I don't know if that was the intent or if that's too much detail, but curious. I saw on the email listing that there was like a purchase order email. Maybe curious, how do the purchase orders work with Continia and the receipt of goods or invoices, etc.
Yeah, Brian, I'm happy to jump in here and talk about that. So, in addition to capturing invoices, we can also integrate multiple document types, right? As you noticed, purchase orders is one of our native formats, right? These are just some examples of things that we see most often. So, with the use of Continia, you have the ability to not just ingest the invoice, but you can do an integrated 2- or 3-way match directly inside of the ERP. So that can look like a lot of different things. So a 2-way match obviously is looking at the subledger from the purchasing headers and looking for the outbound order, and then matching the received invoice against multiple data points, starting with the order number, then the items, a description, quantity, and pricing at the time of receipt. And we also look at the warehousing subledger. So if you have open warehouse receipts, you can also do a 3-way match all through a worksheet. Now, this worksheet can also be automated. You can tell the system to automatically do the 2- or 3-way match on receipt of the specific transaction through the OCR. So if you have an outbound PO that you generate from the ERP, or you can actually process them, maybe you have an external PO system, you can actually process them via the OCR to insert a purchase order inside of Business Central. Then you might have inventory that's received at a warehousing entry, right? So that's usually a warehousing subledger entry at the warehouse receipt level. We're matching, again, the order number, item, GL account, resources, fixed assets. We can even capture comments from the OCR. We're also validating the description, the quantity, unit cost, and then matching the variances. So a variance can happen with things like commodity pricing, changes in vendor pricing lists, or even just rounding errors. You can even set up a level of automation with Continia that allows you to do things like variance routing. So you can set up a tolerance either by a dollar amount or by a percentage on the total of the invoice that says if it meets this tolerance value. So let's say within $1 of the estimated value on the outbound PO, you can route the variance to a specific GL account inside of your environment, right? So a lot of environments have something like a purchase variance account. Or you can tell the OCR model to automatically update the PO to match the receipt or the invoice so that you have an integrated three-way match. Now, of course, if it exceeds that variance, you can trigger things like errors or approval flows that require human input. But by leveraging this, you can almost fully automate, if not fully automate, your 2- and 3-way matching process directly with the OCR service. Any reporting that's required as far as variances or differences are done by this worksheet or automated by the OCR service. That's entirely up to you. You can dictate the level of automation that you choose. You can also dictate what is matched. So if you want to create an environment that says that the description is not required, but you always have to match an order number if it's present. You always have to match an item number if it's present. You'll notice that the configuration of this is native to Business Central and is done by dropdowns. You're not having to hard code anything. You're not having to write any kind of custom extensions. Everything is built into Business Central and is a part of your workflow. You can either set up global rules or you can even have unique rules that are set up by vendor. That's entirely up to you. We let you dictate that at configuration or on the fly. Does that cover most of what you're looking for, Brian, or is there a unique use case that you might want to explore?
No, that's good. I mean, we are simple. We don't carry inventory. Most of our products are drop ship. I'd like to continue the discussion and we can get into some nuances, but yeah, no, this was helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for their time today, and we will follow up with the recording and send it to everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So Joy and Patrick and Medina, thanks very much for your time.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.